It is the A train going city to city, state to state, coast to coast, and I'm literally going coast to coast. And that's right, I'm streaming on twitch.tv and also on my YouTube channel. Two of them, as a matter of fact. I'll figure that out later. But right now, I'm just elated to have a guest on. Y'all used to hear me and this guy back in the day on a radio station here in Wichita on the west side of town. We're not going to say their name because I now work for KFH. But me and my guest, we had such good rapport. He could throw something out there and I'd catch it and throw it right back. And we'd be playing pretty much radio ping pong. My guest today on the A Train Sports Talk, I can't remember where he's at right now, but he's somewhere out in the dirty, dirty South. None other than my good friend, Jason Marks. Welcome in, Jason.
Oh, wow. You pulled out the canned applause from the old days at that radio station in Wichita. Wow, I'm impressed.
Yeah, man, we go back a long ways, man. I'm so glad to have you. You know, you are my first guest because I've been trying to figure this thing out. And some people say, well, I don't know how to do the link and blah, blah. But it helps when you have somebody in radio that know exactly what they're doing. And you're going to be the brains I pick from now on out because I want to know how to do this. I want to know how to do this. How do I get from point A to B to C to D throughout the whole alphabet? But man, I'm just glad to have you on here, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, and it's good to be back on. I am not in the radio industry anymore. For a little bit, I moved back to Alabama for a little while, did a little cup of coffee in Atlanta for 2.5 years, came back to Alabama, and now I'm just 20 miles north of Nashville right now working for 24/7 Sports.
24/7 sports. Yeah, sometimes I get some of their feeds. And right now, I want to let my listeners know. I know y'all normally used to hear me talk about high school basketball here in the state of Kansas, and rightfully so. Now, Jason, on the other hand, he hasn't been a big fan of women's basketball, but I have to tell him around here, man, it's a hotbed. There are some young, talented female athletes, man, and already getting Power Five offers. Matter of fact, one just committed to K State, and from what I'm hearing, there's another one that might commit. And it's already been said you better start getting your tickets early.
Well, let me just correct you a little bit. It's not that I don't like women's basketball. It's just that I'm just not that invested in it. I haven't really been that invested in it because even going back to the days of Colin Cowherd, remember the Don Imus controversy where he
Oh man,
got fired for his comments about the Rutgers women's basketball players. I'm not going to repeat them, even though that we're not FCC regulated, but I'm not going to repeat them, but we
right?
all know what they were. So Colin Cowherd, in his response, he said Don Imus should have been fired for talking women's basketball. And that's been kind of a mantra in the industry for a while. Of course, times have changed. That was about probably what, 15, close to
10,
20
15 years
years
ago,
from
yeah.
now when I heard that. But it's just not a matter. And it also, too, some people get really, really sensitive about women's basketball. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm not even going to touch it. Y'all can have it. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it alone because I will probably piss off more people than I would probably interest them.
And my thing, since I've been following, especially at the high school level, I was invited by a coach to come check out his girls team, and the way they play, man, he subs in like a hockey line, five in, five out, and the second five don't miss a beat, and they're relentless on defense. And I mean, they pretty much boat race teams.
Well, I just finished working spotting for my statistician in my side hustle over at Welch College here in Gallatin, about 10 minutes from my house. The girls they beat their opponent today 90-25. So I know all about like the convoy subbing and everything like that. We experienced a little bit of that with the opposing team today, but it didn't seem to help them that much.
Man, and I've been seeing scores like that around here, man. Like, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the name Wichita Heights. And
Oh, very, very familiar. I remember. Hmm.
yeah, of course, everybody remembers Perry Ellis, but now their girls team. Matter of fact, he has a cousin. Her name is Samaya Ellis. She's signed up with a 4-year school in Texas. They beat Wichita North some like 80 something to 5 or something like that. I'm like, I can score 5 points myself playing 1-on-5 against them.
Well, you and I had some fun with Perry Ellis back in the day. Which shout out Perry if you're watching. We did it with love, of course.
Right.
But talking about that, Deion Sanders' daughter actually plays women's basketball just about an hour and a half south of me in Huntsville, Alabama, at Alabama A&M.
Okay. Because she did start out at Colorado, didn't she? When he now went out there, I believe
Don't
so.
don't confirm. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure of that. I just know that right now she is at Alabama A&M.
All right. Well, the thing I want to address right now, and I know we're going to bounce some things back and forth, but what do you think about the MVP for the NFL? And I know it's usually been it almost like an unwritten rule. It has to be a quarterback. It has to be a quarterback. But my my theory is this right here. Since it's quarterback driven and everything is pass happy, you have a 2,000-yard rusher. I think Saquon Barkley, hands down, in my opinion, should be the MVP.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree with you. I don't know if I really see much value in the NFL MVP as it has been years ago, just for the fact because let's think about this. And I'm going to bring back some trauma myself as an Atlanta Falcons fan that Matt Ryan won the MVP the year that the Falcons went to the Super Bowl. And he had a great season. No doubt about that. He had a great season that year. Never could recover the magic after that, but he had a great season that year, and he was worthy of MVP status. But I just think, and again, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at the Saquon for MVP train since we are on the A Train podcast. I'm not against the people who get behind that. Don't get me wrong, but it just seems that the NFL to me is just the Kansas City Chiefs and everybody else, it seems, from my vantage points. And you look at Pat Mahomes, and it just seems like he dominates the headlines outside of everybody talking shit about the Dallas Cowboys. But it's Pat Mahomes after that, where it's just Pat Mahomes, Pat Mahomes, Pat Mahomes, Pat Mahomes. And again, it won't surprise me if he becomes the NFL MVP again. But right now, it just seems in the NFL, it's the Kansas City Chiefs world, and everyone else is living in it. Now,
right.
if would I would be lying to you if I said that there was no Kansas City Chiefs fatigue with me. There is some, but at the same time, it's not a matter of I'm going to hate on them because they're so good. I've been guilty of that in the past.
New England.
I've had a little bit of the hate for the Chicago Bulls on their run because I got a little bit of Bulls fatigue. Still loved MJ, but got a little fatigue from it. I wanted to, see some of these other guys, coming up, getting their ring. Shaq and Penny getting the ring, which of course they had their chance when Jordan had his little retirement, but couldn't seal the deal because there was this guy named Hakeem Olajuwon that kind of got in the way of that. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, Hakeem the Dream. For you young kids out there, if you don't know who I'm talking about, just type it in your TikTok, get some reels in there, get educated,
and find out how to play real big man basketball, not this
where everything just wasn't a 3-pointer. Right. Yeah. And I love the NBA, and I've kind of gotten a little fatigued from it where it's just, okay, dunk, 3-pointer, dunk, 3-pointer, dunk, 3-pointer, dunk, 3-pointer. Mix in a little baseline jumper every once in a while. That's
right.
just
mid range.
Get off my lawn, guys.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna come across as old and disgruntled. Well, I'm 57, so I guess I'm kind of
you might be a little bit more. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little more disgruntled than you, and I'm 42.
I'm just rubbing off on you.
There you go.
But yeah, that's my rant on Saquon. I mean, he got the stats, and we've seen how they have pretty much almost have tried to devalue the running back position because they want this wide open RPO. Uh, what would the Eagles be without Saquon this year? I'm pretty sure Nick Sirianni would probably be on the hot seat right about now. Uh, the Eagles probably wouldn't be on the verge of punching their ticket to the Super Bowl if they can get past. And I've never been a fan of this team, but Jaden Daniels kind of got me excited. The Washington Commanders.
Hey, and there's a reason to be excited for the Washington Commanders because it seems like a franchise that's finally being run by competent people. When was the last? Because when you think about, well, with the old team name, and we know what that
You can
is.
say it, Redskins.
Yeah, like the days of John Riggins, the days of Art Monk, the days of
Oh,
Mark
right.
Rippon, Ernest Biner. That
Let's not
we
forget.
remember
Let's not forget because the Hall seems to have forgotten him. Doug Williams.
Doug Williams. Yes, you are correct. And then you had that law where Daniel Snyder took over and basically tried to run a fantasy team, and it failed miserably for him. Just like if I tried to get into fantasy football and put a team together, it would have went probably the same way. But to go back to the Saquon angle here, and I'm going to take a different approach on this, where I do agree that the value of the running back in the NFL in the last decade has gone down exponentially because we're now into a more like pass happy, explosive plays kind of league. But the one thing I will say about Saquon is he is at least trying to keep the value of the running back from being plummeted even more. He's brought a little bit more value to it back to, I wouldn't say it's there yet to the days of LaDainian Tomlinson, where he was one of the top running backs and top paid running backs in the league, like the Chris Johnsons with the Tennessee Titans. Remember the heyday? He had that 2,000-yard rushing season for them. Then he got his bank, and then all of a sudden he disappeared.
Right.
But you're seeing a lot more of the high octane air raid types of passes, and really you're starting to see it more in football nowadays. Now, college is a little bit different because you have running backs that have value, but
Ashton Genty
you
for
think,
one. I would love to see
yeah,
him in the
well,
Cowboys.
but
Love to see him in the
but
Cowboys uniform.
but outside of Ashton Genty, Travion Henderson, Jam Miller at Alabama, you have a couple of them that have spurts and they get their name out there.
And how about this one right here? Because he's going to be on the all-name team. Cam Skattebo.
Cam Skattebo. That's another good one too. You're right. Cam Skattebo he brought the Mike Allstott flavor back into. He was like a mini Mike Allstott. That's my description of Cam Skattebo. But for Saquon, I think the big thing about now is Saquon is bringing the value of the running back into football, where it seemed like it just kind of faded away because, like, go back to the LaDainian Tomlinson. After he got his money, he went from a Ferrari into a 92 Ford Escort all of a sudden, just out of nowhere. Chris Johnson, the same thing, where thank you. But it's just a matter of bringing back the value. And I think that Saquon Barkley has done that because you look at like Bill Belichick. You remember the heydays of Bill Belichick and the Patriots. He had running backs by committee that could just come in, bam, bam, plug and play.
Right.
It kind of gave you a foreshadowing of what the value of the running back actually is. Like Ezekiel Elliott. After Jerry paid all that money, where did he go after that? You really just didn't see him. You didn't see the explosiveness of what he had. Okay, yeah, and I'm sure we're going to be getting into that later.
Right. And I'm gonna explain it right now before it loses my train of thought, pardon the pun. But I can tell you what happened with Ezekiel Elliott. For one, he wasn't a Le'Veon Bell. Now, why would I reference that? Because here comes a kid named Tony Pollard. And you know how most alpha male backs are when they feel that touches are being taken away from them. They get highly offended. They become a cancer in the locker room. Ezekiel Elliott became the opposite of that. He became Tony Pollard's biggest cheerleader. He became that guy that was, you get us in the red zone, I'll get you in the end zone. You need a couple of 2 or 3 yards, I'll get you that. You want to change the pace? Hey kid, go ahead, get in the game. Oh, if you score a touchdown, guess what? I'm gonna be the first one to meet you and celebrate with you. That's what Ezekiel Elliott was. Zeke even said, look, I'll take a pay cut to remain a Cowboy. But Jones said, nope. And he walked to the Patriots and still quietly had 600 plus yards in a backup role. So that's what happened to Ezekiel Elliott. He
You
was a
brought
team
up
player.
you brought up the running backs getting offended about the touches. That almost sounds like the old Tony Dorsett, Herschel Walker situation way back in the day.
And he went to Denver and was buried.
Pretty much. And then Herschel got traded to the Vikings for almost the king's ransom.
Right. And that started their Super Bowl run, which now, what we once knew as America's team,
You're still not calling them that, right?
is now known as, pardon the pun, no offense to Cody Rhodes, but they are now known as America's Nightmare, thanks to Jerry Jones and their new hire in Brian Schottenheimer, the coach that nobody wanted. As long as he was a long-time assistant, he was fine. But now we got the coach nobody wanted. And if that didn't worse, they're thinking about hiring Matt Eberflus as their defensive coordinator. Wah, 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 wah.
You as a Cowboys fan do not sound that thrilled about it.
I'd rather watch a
You're
girls'
not.
high
You're
school
not.
I'd rather watch a girls' high school basketball game than to watch this train wreck. This is what you call the demise of the American nightmare known as the Dallas Cowboys.
And I remember that in a private chat that you were asking me about my opinion on this and with the Dallas Cowboys, because it was fun for a little while when we were talking about the possibility of a Deion Sanders hire, which I joked would be the most Jerry Jones shit ever, which it would be. But to really understand the Dallas Cowboys, especially in the Jerry Jones era, you have to go all the way back to the beginning of the Jerry Jones era, where he did fire Tom Landry, which made a lot of people mad. But then again, Tom Landry didn't get him to the promised land throughout the 80s. The 80s were dominated by the New York Giants, Bill Parcells, Lawrence Taylor, and the San Francisco 49ers, Joe Montana, Roger Craig, Ronnie Lott, Jerry Rice. That was the 80s era of the NFL. The Dallas Cowboys got to the NFC Championship game a couple of times, but they didn't win it because of the 49ers.
49ers.
And then, the Giants, they got a couple of Lombardis in that era as well.
And to your point there, Danny White was the quarterback. And what happened was there was this thing that we have today called free agency that wasn't jumping back then. So what happened was the Cowboys, Harvey Martin, Ed Too Tall Jones, Randy White, those guys became fossils. To those of you who don't know what that means, they got old. And they didn't have replacements in place for them. Then we had to deal with Gary Hogeboom as a quarterback or something like that. Whatever.
Oh God, that's going back.
Danny White did what he could while he could, but he was getting old too. He was just as old when he replaced Roger Staubach. So, I mean, they let the team get old.
But with the genesis of you're moving on from Tom Landry, then you're getting all of these draft picks from the Herschel Walker trade, which helped with their Super Bowl run in the 90s. You bring in a buddy in Jimmy Johnson who I wouldn't say led Miami to success, but maintained their success,
Maintain,
because
right,
the success of Miami is credited to Howard Schnellenberger in the 80s.
right.
That was Howard's baby. And Jimmy Johnson was able to maintain that. Credit to him. Then you come to the Cowboys, you put everything together, and then you go on the Super Bowl run. You get 2 of them. Then all of a sudden, Jimmy wants a little bit of flexibility. Jerry's not going to give it to him and runs him off. Then you get Barry Switzer in, another buddy. He gets you 1 more. You run him off too.
Well,
and then let's continue with this. And pardon my French, because I know I've already said a couple of swear words on this podcast, but I don't think we're regulated by the FCC, if I understand. But it has to take a work of art to fuck up Bill Parcells.
wow.
It is a work of art and incompetence to fuck up Bill Parcells. Because Bill Parcells, and I remember this famously during his era with the Cowboys, when he went on the rant about, well, if I'm going to be the cook, shouldn't I have a say in some of the groceries? You remember that? You remember that line,
Yeah,
right?
I remember that.
That's always stuck out with me. If I'm going to be the cook, shouldn't I have a say in the types of, I don't know, tomatoes, the type grade of beef that I want in my ribeye, my sirloin? And that's telling me right there that even with Bill Parcells, who has the pedigree, the caliber, this is a guy that not only took the New York Giants to multiple Super Bowls, he was able to take the New England Patriots, who were a laughingstock before Robert Kraft came in,
Right.
and took them to a Super Bowl. So the guy, that tells me, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy knows ball. He knows what he's talking about. He knows how to get there. And to make a quote from Jerry Jones, and I wish I had put the clip together and thought about it, but Jerry's trying to look for his glory hole before he dies. That, to me, that was his best chance. If he would have just sit back and say, Bill, you tell me what you need, I will get it for you. Let Bill cook, to use the pun. Let Bill cook, and he'll get you there. And he got him to a playoff. He got him to playoff appearances. Now let's fast forward. You just think about all the wide receivers that this franchise has had. Past Michael Irvin, which is the most prominent that everybody my age, your age remembers.
Right.
You got guys like Dez Bryant,
Yes.
CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper at one point, who was
Terrell Owens
at out. You had Terrell Owens, the greatest heel in college football ever, in my opinion. And you couldn't get over the top. And here's the other thing about Jerry. I think in some instances he feels that, like Tony Romo, Dak Prescott, 2 good examples. Tony Romo, for what he was, he had his moment, his comeuppance, making Drew Bledsoe a backup for the second time in his career, because we remember the infamous first one.
Yep.
But eventually everybody figured him out, and he was productive, but not as effective as he used to be. And Jerry Jones felt like he was just so, like, his franchise was going to go under if he loses this guy, and gave him an absurd contract. I can't even remember the amount of money it was for a mid quarterback. Dak Prescott came in, started out well, started out great. Everybody figured him out. Everybody eventually figured him out. he became an average quarterback. And again, I'm not mad at Tony Romo and Dak Prescott for getting their bag. Congratulations to them. I hope they tongue kiss their agent when they fleeced Jerry Jones for all of that money. But that's another thing about Jerry. That tells me right here. Okay, they hired a new coach. Like Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy went to a damn Super Bowl.
Yes.
And he couldn't do anything.
Actually, he won the Super Bowl.
Four. That's four examples right there of coaches. Two of them got you there, and you ran them off. Then you have two others, Bill Parcells and Mike McCarthy, who went to a Super Bowl, not in your franchise. They come to yours and expecting with $1 billion, what the value of the Dallas Cowboys right now is absurd. But Jerry's never been shy about spending money. So going back to it, why are you not giving him the groceries to do it? Or why are they not able to duplicate the success that Mike McCarthy had at Green Bay and what Bill Parcells, the success that he was able to have with the Giants, everybody knows, the Patriots, and even at one point the New York Jets, he had success with them. Why were they not able to duplicate that at Dallas? So when I see it like, okay, Jason Garrett, probably a good coach, but he was a yes man.
Yes.
Is that going to be the same thing for Schottenheimer? Is this just basically going to be Groundhog Day again in Dallas? And right now, everything that I have just pointed out to you, Anthony, doesn't really give that much confidence that Dallas Cowboys is going to not go from the America's team to America's nightmare, that they're going to just continue being America's punchline, because everybody's going to think, when they think of the Dallas Cowboys in their heyday, they think of VHS tapes. You kids out there probably don't know what those are.
Right. You might have to show them what a VHS. Hey, closest I can get, this is a cassette tape right here.
Yeah. Two Live Crew and Me So Horny was on those cassette tapes.
Oh man.
That tells you the last 3 decades of Dallas Cowboys football. That tells you everything. Well, let me rephrase that. After 1996, that tells you everything you need to know.
Hey, I can even tell you this much. My 2002 Lincoln Town car that I ended up trading off, and I got me a Mazda, actually had a cassette tape player in it. I'm pretty sure when someone got in that car, it's like, "What's that?" Like, oh, that's before your time.
Oh, I'm sure if we got into a car, my stepson and I, who's 15, and we got into a car and he saw that cassette tape, he would probably think it would be something to put your cell phone in to hold it. And you know what? I wouldn't be mad at it. It's actually kind of clever.
Oh man. Anyway, let's move a little bit forward, because this Dallas Cowboy talk is depressing, man. I would, I'm gonna send out a tweet to Dez Bryant and get his thoughts. I sent him this. I sent this clip of this kid that caught a pass. I think it was a college game, and the defender had tipped the ball, and the receiver had fell on his back, and the receiver, while he's laying down, one hand catches the ball. I might have sent you that clip too. But
You may have.
This why he's laying on his back. And I'm saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure if that was Dez Bryant, that would have been an incomplete pass.
Which really, I will say this, as looking back at watching that Dez Bryant catch is almost like watching the Zapruder film from the JFK assassination, where you're like rewinding it back and forth. I think that was a catch. I'll say that. And I'm probably one of the biggest Dallas Cowboy haters that there is. But I'll say that Dez caught that. Dez caught it. After reviewing the film, Dez caught that.
Right. So, moving forward, we got some big games tomorrow. These teams are trying to punch their ticket to Super Bowl. And first game I want to look at is that Redskins. Oh, did I see Redskins?
You did. You did.
That just rolled out. The Washington Commanders, and no, I'm not apologizing for anybody that may be offended. Come on, stop being softer than medicated cotton, please. But the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles, and we know what the Eagles bring to the table, but we also know they picked a fine time to get banged up because I believe Jalen Hurts now, after last week's game, is dealing with an injury, which means he might not be able to run as effectively because that's part of his game plan. Uh, we don't know if AJ Brown, we don't know what book he's going to be bringing to read on the sidelines.
Or if he
It
needs to bring a book.
better be a playbook. Uh,
Right? That should be the only book at this point.
which the question would be is this one of those games now where the Commanders can basically key in on the run game and try to slow down? Because I don't think nobody, the way he's been playing this year, stops Saquon Barkley, but you can at least try to slow him down. Because I think even Dallas Goddard, their reliable tight end, he's dealing with some injuries. So, how do you see this game going? And would you be surprised if the Commanders pulled this off? Because right now, Jaden Daniels is the rookie Patrick Mahomes. And I just got this gut feeling. If they win this game and go to the Super Bowl, regardless of who they play against, they could pretty darn well win this thing.
Well, the key of that is going to be physicality. Like that, if you have a team that's a little banged up and that's a little wounded, the recipe to attack that team is going to be physicality. And if Jalen Hurts is going to be 100%, Dallas Goddard's going to be, if they're not 100%, then there's the opportunity that's going to be there. But I think that the Eagles also, I believe they have the home field advantage in this.
Yeah.
That they may, lined up. And also, you got to think about this. And I know that some people are probably going, well, this is an absolutely absurd question. I would totally understand if you thought that. This is going to be a big stage for Jaden Daniels. Like, this is just regular season game, divisional rivalry game. We're talking about the NFC Championship, and for a rookie. And the lights shine a little bit brighter in an NFC Championship game. The lights are especially going to shine much brighter, especially in the Super Bowl. And that's going to be the key. Will the stage get too big and too bright for Jaden Daniels? This is going to be his first test as a rookie. Jalen Hurts has already been there. They've been down this road. They've got to the Super Bowl. They've come up short, but they have gotten to a Super Bowl. So they know the path. This is, and they say, well, he played big time college football in the SEC. It's still the NFL. It's still the NFC Championship game. It is still a big stage. If Jaden Daniels gets over that, I do believe the Commanders can win this game. That's going to be the big key about it. If he embraces the bright lights of the stage, they win this game. If it becomes too big, it's not going to happen. And Philadelphia may grind them out to a victory.
And here's another point to bring up. It's not like they're not familiar with this team. They both play in the NFC East, which means they've already played each other twice. They've also split, which means they have that confidence factor of, hey, we know we can beat them because we have beaten them. It's just that, like you say, the lights are a little bit brighter, the stage is a little bit bigger, but the Commanders played on the road last week. So I do not see the stage getting too big or the lights getting too bright for this young kid. And the biggest thing is his teammates have confidence in that he can get the job done. And if I go based off of his interviews and how he conducts himself in the interviews with the maturity level and answering all the right questions, I have no reason to believe that this team cannot win this game in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, the place notorious for throwing battery packed snowballs at Santa Claus.
Here's another factor that goes in, and this is the Atlanta Falcons fan trauma coming out of this. I want to see how much Dan Quinn has learned. How much Dan Quinn has learned, because in his first season at Washington, he's done fantastic. And again, we may never know the mystery behind what really happened with 28-3, which he really should have just ran the ball and tried to chew as much clock as he could. That's besides the point. Basically telling Kyle Shanahan, like, bro, knock this shit off. Knock it off with the passes, dude. This is Tom Brady we're talking about. The best defense against Tom Brady is keeping him on the sidelines. Knock this shit off, Kyle. I know you're going to San Francisco, but knock this shit off.
Right. Don't sabotage my career.
But, well, also, Kyle Shanahan could be a lot of big credit of how Dan Quinn got to a Super Bowl. But from that experience in Atlanta after the Super Bowl, like how much he has learned. And I think that there has been some experiences that now he's had better judgment on than he had in those couple of years in Atlanta before he Arthur Blank finally pulled the trigger and said, this ain't going to work out. That's another factor of this too, because Dan Quinn has been on that stage.
Right.
The lights have gotten too bright for him. He has experienced that. That's another factor in this game that I could see as well. He has experienced the lights getting too bright, the stage getting too big, and how he prepares Jaden Daniels and really the rest of this team, because the players that have been on this team for the most part have not had this kind of experience, and how he prepares them to that. That's going to be another key factor in this is the Dan Quinn experience from the year of Super Bowl 51, and now what he has learned from that and how he implements this into his game preparation.
Right. Which now leads us to the next game. We've seen this during the regular season. But now we're back to a stage that Kansas City is all too familiar with. AFC Championship game. Kansas City versus Buffalo. And just for the sake of those of you who are listening who might be anti-Kansas City versus the officials. I had to throw that in there.
I was waiting on it. I was waiting on that.
Because they say now when you play the Chiefs, you're also playing against the officials. I say it like this. When you're playing against Kansas City, you need to be aware that you're playing against a team that's not going to beat themselves. Plain and simple. Now, yes, there were some phantom calls last week against the Texans. They got the benefit of the hometown calls. But this is one of those games where I hope between Buffalo and Kansas City that the officials, that the players decide the game and not some stupid whistle.
And that's really the only thing that you can hope for in the season. I think it might have been the season when the Tampa Bay Bucks beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. It was Tom Brady's last ring. But I think it was it was either a divisional playoff game or a championship game. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I believe that it went to overtime. And Kansas City won the coin toss. And they basically just drove down the field and scored. Game over. And it led to whining and bitching about the overtime rules, which I never had a problem with because,
Right.
well, okay, you didn't get the ball. Well,
When the
fucking
coin
take it
toss.
back from them.
Right.
Like, make us. And the reason they got into overtime was because they could not make a stop. They couldn't make a stop. That's why they got to overtime. Then the Chiefs got the ball to start the game. They couldn't stop them then. Game over. You had
It's
your
called
chance.
sudden death.
You blew it. Yes. Which is why people say it's like, well, it's just like, no, you're pissed. You're just pissed off because Pat Mahomes is going to the Super Bowl. Just tell me the truth.
Right.
Tell me straight. It's not the overtime rules. It's not Buffalo getting robbed. It's not because you like the Buffalo Bills. It's just you're pissed off that Pat Mahomes is going back to the Super Bowl and you're sick and tired of seeing it. Just be honest.
Right. I mean, if you don't want to get
be
there,
honest with me.
your team should beat them.
Right. If Buffalo would have made the stop, that game would have been over. They would have advanced. It went to overtime. Unfortunately, the coin toss did not go their way. Although I do believe that they should go back to the old XFL scramble, but that may be a liability in the league. But that's just me. That's me.
Right. Right.
But going back to this game, I think we may see a similar situation. I think it's probably going to be another shootout again. And Buffalo, God bless them. God bless them. God bless Josh Allen.
Man.
They've been they are the modern day equivalent of the New York Knicks in the 90s, where they've got the team to win it all. But there was always that other team that got in the way. And that other team was the Chicago Bulls.
Right.
The Kansas City Chiefs.
Michael Jordan.
And a guy named Michael Jordan.
And they also wore red uniforms.
Yeah, but with the black trim instead of the yellow. But I kind of feel like a same scenario. I joke when a coworker of mine asked me how this game was going to play out. And I said, oh, it's probably going to be some phantom call in the end that's going to decide it for the Chiefs. Because, you know, we all love a good conspiracy theory, right? When it comes to NFL officiating, or if your team loses, it was the ref's fault and not yours. We all love it. And I also love to make fun of people for doing that. Because you have 60 minutes of plays and you have 60 minutes of events that can also change the trajectory of a game. And that's and that comes straight from conversations I've had with former college players and former NFL players. Looking back, they'll say, yeah, we probably got robbed on that pass interference, but there was probably a third down that we should have gotten, but a drop pass caused us to punt the ball again, where we could have been driving and could have scored then.
Right. That's how you have to look at it.
Yeah. Well,
because there always be some calls that are going to be questionable. It's all a part of the game. It's
judgmental call. And don't get me wrong. There has been some officiating has been absolutely horrible. It's been terrible. But in the end, you got to look past it, and you got to continue to play.
Right.
But as much as I would love to go to party like it's 1990 and 1991 and 1992 with the Buffalo Bills, I think right now in the NFL, it's just Pat Mahomes' world and Travis Kelce's world and Andy Reid's world. And right now, we're just living in it. I think the Chiefs are going to pull this one off.
And to be quite honestly, because there was one time I think we wanted to see the Patriots go undefeated because we ain't seen an undefeated team in our lifetime. Well, we can scratch that off because we might not ever see that. But one thing I do want to see in my lifetime, even if it has to be the Chiefs, I want to see a three-peat, because then you have to start worrying about the GOAT conversation now. No one might not ever touch Tom Brady's 7 rings. But if Mahomes can pull this off, unless Brady comes out of retirement, and it ain't going to happen. Even Brady hasn't won 3 in a row.
Well, and I think Brady's now more in the ownership role with the Las Vegas Raiders now. So I don't know if he's going to pull a Michael Jordan Washington Wizards and come back like he did. But to kind of go on that undefeated conversation, which I know the conversation that we had back in the days of Wichita. And I remember, let's just throw a little sidebar here, the story with it. So I was on the air with Paul Savage in the press box on that other station. And we were talking about the upcoming Kansas and Kentucky game. This was the 2014-2015 season. And of course, me coming from SEC country, you know, I was labeled the SEC bias guy because I was on the air, and it had to take stones to say this, on a radio station in Kansas, to basically say, without saying it, that Kansas was going to get their ass whooped in that upcoming match with Kentucky.
Actually,
I didn't say those exact words, but I basically implemented Kansas was going to get their ass whooped by this Kentucky team because this Kentucky team was going to be one that we may not see for a very, very long time. And I was rooting for that Kentucky team to run the table because they would have done something for the first time since the 1976 Indiana team, I believe, that had Isaiah Thomas, that they were going to run the table undefeated and win a national championship. And this was probably going to be the closest in my lifetime that we're probably going to get.
So now I would be content with seeing the team win 3 Super Bowls in a row because it's never done. You know, you can hang up, you know, the old Miami Dolphins 72 team, they can go ahead and smoke their stogies and drink their cognac or whatever old men at their age drink.
Mercury
And
Morris is
our record
popping
is
it.
still intact. Or
Mercury
maybe,
Morris is popping the champagne bottle in heaven.
or wherever he went.
You said it, not me.
Hey, all I'm saying is I got no heaven or hell to put him in, so wherever he's at. But
Fair enough.
I mean, he was
Moving
in
on.
and out of jail a lot. I mean, I know that much. He was in and out of jail, so you know. But yeah, but if Kansas City can pull off this 3-peat, I mean, you got to say hats off to him. I mean, I know people are getting tired of the old Pony and Dance show, but as Ric Flair would say, to be the man, you have to beat the man. If you don't want to see them 3-peat, Buffalo, y'all need to find a way to win this game to keep them from 3-peating. You got
And
your
if they
hand up.
don't,
Yeah.
and if they don't, you have to do what I call the Roman salute right now. You have to acknowledge them.
NFL, acknowledge them.
Oh, I'm pretty sure Roger already has. Because his league's making a lot of bank off of this right now.
And then to top it off, you can kill that theory about large market versus small market. But I want to ask you this question because we talked about Jerry, and I kind of liken Jerry Jones to George Steinbrenner because he was always hands on, but as he got older, eventually he became hands off. But the reason I'm referencing that altogether, throwing baseball in here, not that we're going to talk baseball, what would it be like if the NFL was like Major League Baseball and didn't have a salary cap? But we see a different Jerry Jones.
I think you would. But the problem is that he's got to let people cook.
True.
Like I'm pretty sure he has great football knowledge. He played college football at Arkansas. So he probably knows a lot more about the game than I ever will. I'll acknowledge that. But in the end, the formula has been proven. Like the 4 examples that I have just provided you earlier in this podcast, where if you're going to bring you want to bring in a guy who's going to get you a Lombardi, and especially a guy of a caliber who has already won one Lombardi before, and he did it before you won your last Super Bowl in the mid-90s, you got to let these guys, you got to let them cook. He's gone out and he's got the talent. He's gotten the talent to play. But he can't just have like the whole, it's my way or the highway. He's got to give a little bit of leniency because this hasn't worked in almost 30 years.
Exactly.
And if Schottenheimer is just another yes man, then Jerry Jones is going to be coming closer to his grave and not even anywhere close to a Super Bowl. And is he going to, and if do I think that he's going to do it with Dak Prescott? No, I don't. Dak Prescott is not Patrick Mahomes. Dak Prescott is nowhere near it. And everybody in the league has figured him out. Even with the firepower of weapons that he has, everybody's figured him out.
And here's the other crazy thing about that, and we're going to get off this. As a matter of fact, we're going to almost bring this train right back into the station. But there are betting odds going out right now. What do you think would happen? And I try not to get into that because I don't want to come across as being insensitive. But now one of the biggest questions is, what's liable to happen first? Cowboys win the Super Bowl or Jerry Jones is resting in peace? A nice way of putting it.
Well, right now, until I'm proven otherwise, I don't see the landscape unless something changes where Jerry just sits back and goes, "You tell me what you need. I will get it for you. Sit back, let them cook." That seems to be the phrase of this show today.
Right, let them cook.
You gotta let them cook, because if you're still trying to be hands-on with it or letting Steven be more hands-on with this, it ain't gonna happen. It's not gonna happen, because you look at the NFC right now. You've got the Eagles. Washington is on the uptick in your division.
In your division, right? Got Detroit, Minnesota.
Detroit, Minnesota, which with the Sam Darnold experience, that's going to be interesting from that standpoint. Carolina might be starting to figure it out, even though they finished, 5-12 this past season, put up 44 points on the Falcons to end the year. Bryce Young starting to figure it out in the NFL. And we'll trying to go through all the other division. If the Bears figure it out with Caleb Williams, there could be some potential there. A long ways to go, but it could be there.
And Ben Johnson has already fired shots because he already said, and we like beating that team up north 2 games. I mean, he's already fired up the fan base talking about Green Bay. So,
well, good. I hope they at least figure it out. But like the Giants, that ownership group outside of the New York Jets are like the biggest disasters of front offices I've ever seen in my life. And that's the number one. That's the number one market in America, and their NFL teams are just poop. Let's just put it that way.
As Richard Sherman would say, poop fest.
Yes. Just incredible poop fest. Like, you have to be snake bitten if you bring in Aaron Rodgers and you get no results whatsoever, to the point where you even fired your coach, Robert Saleh. To me, which I didn't think that he was that terrible. He wasn't great, but he wasn't that terrible in his tenure.
I think I would have taken him as a Cowboys coach over Schottenheimer, but
I think most people would. I wouldn't deny that. But if you look at the landscape of the NFL right now for the Dallas Cowboys, it still remains very difficult.
Yeah, very. Well, before I let you go, I want your prediction. I want your over and under, and I want your point spread. First, let's go to the Washington Commanders versus the Philadelphia Eagles.
I think it depends on the weather, because we saw how the weather affected the Eagles last game. If it's just going to be cold, I could see this with the home field advantage. I could see this going the Commanders' way. Again, it comes down to Jaden Daniels if the spotlight is too big. But I'm going to go on a limb. I'll say Commanders win 20-13.
I can deal with that. And Kansas City versus Buffalo. Game is in Kansas City.
I think Chiefs win 38-31. It's going to be a shootout.
It's going to be a shootout. All right, then. Well, there you have it. Good to have Jason Marks back on. You can check him out on the Marks Media. Check him out. He's doing some great things. Jason, we'll have to do this again sooner rather than later. So thanks for joining me. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Anthony. Enjoyed it, bud.
All right. All right, we out.
We good?
We good.
All right. Good deal.